This is just an incredible story. It's about nation building, intense family drama, and ultimately a catastrophic collapse. We're about to dive into the reign of one of Jewish history's most successful yet least known rulers. And we're going to see how everything she built was completely torn down in just a handful of years. The whole story really boils down to one central, nagging question. How could a time that was so stable, so successful, what you would absolutely call a golden age for its people, suddenly just unravel and end in complete disaster and foreign invasion? Well, the answer lies with one remarkable queen and the two sons who came after her. And to really get just how extraordinary her story is, you gotta know this. In the entire span of Jewish history, there have only ever been two women who ruled as sovereign queens. Just two. And today, we're talking about one of them.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning with her rise to power. Who exactly was this woman who managed to take the throne in such a turbulent time?
So this is Salome Alexandra, or Shlomatzion in Hebrew. Now, she wasn't born to rule. She was the wife of a pretty brutal warrior king, Alexander Jannaeus. And when he died, he didn't exactly leave her a peaceful, stable kingdom. No, he left a nation that was fractured and bleeding, scarred by years of a vicious civil war that he had caused. Her first move as queen was, well, it was absolutely brilliant. Instead of continuing her husband's violent legacy, she did the complete opposite. She ended the persecution of the powerful religious group known as the Pharisees, who her husband had nearly wiped out. She invited them back from exile, restored their power, and this wasn't just her being nice. It was a political masterstroke. She was literally healing a deep, festering wound in the nation. And that one single act of healing didn't just bring stability. It actually set the stage for what historians now call a golden age. So how'd she do it? Her strategy was a masterclass in political balance. On one side, she healed the country's deepest wounds by bringing back the religious Pharisees and empowering their governing council, the Sanhedrin. But she was no pacifist. On the other side, she kept her husband's powerful army well-funded to scare off any enemies. It was this perfect balance of diplomacy and strength that kept the whole kingdom peaceful and secure. And the results? Well, they really speak for themselves. The historian Flavius Josephus, looking back on this period, summed it up perfectly. He just wrote, "The people flourished under her. For 9 solid years, because of her leadership, the kingdom saw a level of peace and prosperity it had almost never seen before."
But you knew there was a but coming, right? Beneath this calm, prosperous surface, a storm was brewing. A conflict that would undo everything she had achieved. And it was a conflict right inside her own family.
Okay, so here are the two central figures of this tragedy, her sons. And they were polar opposites. You had Hyrcanus, the elder son. He was gentle, pious, and aligned with the religious Pharisees his mother supported. Then you had Aristobulus, the younger son. He was all ambition and military fire, and he was aligned with his father's old crew, the Sadducees. You can literally see how the kingdom's deepest divisions were perfectly mirrored in these two brothers. As long as Salome Alexandra was alive, her authority kept their rivalry in check. But everyone in the kingdom knew the moment she was gone, this dynastic time bomb was going to detonate. And in 67 BC, it did. Her death marked the immediate end of peace and the start of a devastating civil war. Aristobulus didn't waste a single second. Backed by his military allies, he launched a swift, brutal coup. He seized control of the kingdom's most important fortresses. And Hyrcanus, even though he was the rightful heir, just didn't have the will or the power to fight back. He gave up the throne. But the story doesn't end there. A new player enters the game. Antipater the Idumean. Yep, the father of the future Herod the Great. He was a shrewd political operator who saw a huge opportunity in the weak-willed Hyrcanus. He manipulated the deposed heir, convincing him his life was in danger and that he needed to flee. Then, he orchestrated a fateful alliance with a neighboring kingdom, promising them Judean land in exchange for military support. So this was no longer just a family squabble. Thanks to Antipater's scheming, Hyrcanus came back at the head of a massive foreign army of 50,000 soldiers, plunging Judea into a full-scale international war. The brothers' personal fight had officially spiraled out of control, and it was tearing their nation apart.
And all of this chaos created a power vacuum that caught the attention of the world's biggest emerging superpower, Rome.
And at this point, both brothers made the exact same fatal mistake. They separately went to the Roman general Pompey the Great, who was campaigning nearby, and they asked him to settle their dispute. They willingly invited the wolf right into the sheepfold.
You have to imagine, Pompey was just stunned by the opportunity that fell into his lap. He received 3 different groups. Hyrcanus pleaded his case as the rightful heir. Aristobulus argued that he was the stronger, more effective ruler. And then, a third group, representing the people, asked Pompey to get rid of both of them and abolish the monarchy entirely. It was a perfect portrait of a kingdom that was utterly broken.
The speed of the collapse is just staggering. In 67 BC, Salome dies and the Golden Age ends. By 63 BC, just 4 years later, a Roman general is conquering Jerusalem. 4 years. That is all it took to erase a decade of peace and replace it with foreign domination.
Pompey's decision was cold and calculated. He saw Aristobulus as arrogant and defiant, but Hyrcanus as weak and controllable. So he chose the compliant brother. When Aristobulus' supporters resisted, Pompey laid siege to Jerusalem, breached the Temple Mount, and ended the war decisively, on Roman terms.
And the outcome for the brothers was grim. The ambitious Aristobulus was dragged back to Rome in chains, and Hyrcanus, the supposed winner, was installed as high priest, but Pompey stripped him of the title of king. In the end, neither of them really won.
The kingdom was no longer independent. It became what's known as a Roman client state, which means that officially they were self-ruled, but in reality, all the real power now flowed from Rome. The Hasmonean dream of a sovereign Jewish kingdom after lasting for a century was over. Which brings us to a final, powerful question. Can a family feud really change the world? In this case, the answer is an undeniable yes. The selfish ambition of 2 brothers didn't just destroy their mother's golden age, it threw the gates wide open for Roman conquest, and that set the stage for centuries of history, including the rise of Herod and the world in which the events of the New Testament would unfold. It's a sobering reminder of how the smallest personal conflicts can have the largest, world-altering consequences.